All right, here we go. Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Conscious Contact Big Book study of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am an alcoholic. My name is David. Hello, hello. And good to see you all this morning. And let's start off with, as we do, our friend this time, Bill B, is going to read the preamble.
Morning, everyone. Bill Alcoholic, AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober, help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Bill, thank you so much. And now I'm going to ask everybody to, there we go, to join me in a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholics in and out of the room, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I don't believe there are any new folks here today, although just in case, I'll just go through the intro stuff quickly. We're a line-by-line big book study, and what we do is we we categorize the text into 5 categories, and Rich will post those categories in the chat, and I'll also show you here, and then questions, directions, and explanations, promises, warnings, and history, and those are the highlighter colors that I use because I'm just a bit obsessed with office products, but that's another fellowship, so we'll move on. Today, and like I said, that's going to be in the chat, so we'll be getting on with that in a moment. And then what our format is, I'll talk until about, I'll do my thing until about 7 o'clock. Then we'll open up the meeting, and while I'm doing my thing, that part of the meeting will be recorded, because what we do is we keep an archive of our meetings on YouTube, so the link for that is in the chat as well. I'll just give a quick plug for also, if you'd like a weekly text reminder of this meeting that goes out on Saturdays, that has the Zoom link, and it also has the archive link. Just leave me a chat message with your cell phone number, and I'll make sure that you get added to that list. So, as I said, we are on page 83. We've been talking about the chapter Into Action. We today is going to be, you're going to need your green highlighter for a lot of, there's some direction, there's some explanation, and the one that you're going to put a lot of mileage on today is the blue for promises. There are a lot of promises today, and if you listen closely, a little, you don't even have to listen closely. I'll be very vocal about it. A little contrarianism, as I because as I was reading and prepping for this today, I saw something that was sort of the a little bit of the opposite of what I used to believe. So we'll talk about that as we go along. So I'm just going to jump right in on page 83, and that is we've been, it says the spiritual life is not a theory, but I want to, what's that? That's not a freestanding observation that Bill throws in there. It is almost a little bit of a warning, almost a little bit of a summary, because what he's been doing up until that point is he's been laying out a course of action for us that is not always comfortable action. Direct amends are not always comfortable, and they often evoke a little bit of trepidation and fear when we think about them or when we're about to undertake them. When we get to the other side of them, it's a different story. But those direct amends can be, even for seasoned alcoholics, seasoned AA members, I should say, it can be a little intimidating. I was telling my sponsor a funny and hilarious story about my hijinks when I was sober, and as or when I was drunk. Sorry. And when I was drunk, and and this was just about 3 days ago, and as I'm like coming off the punchline, I realize, hold on, there's an amends there that I've never thought about making before. And I went, and so it was an angel and devil moment, because the angel said, share this with your sponsor and get accountable and go through the process. And the devil said, move on. It's no big deal. It's been 30 years. 37 years. Forget about it. So, anyway, just an example there. So he's talking about the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. And what is he talking about living it? He's not talking about just going to AA meetings. He's not talking about talking about it. He's talking about taking the sometimes difficult actions that he's been laying out for us up to this point. So again, that notion of reading things in their context in terms of where they are in the book is really important. I've been I can accuse myself over the years. I've been a perpetrator of soloing phrases from the big book, taking them, quoting them in meetings, quoting them to sponsees, and not looking at what's going on around that text, because that's what's really important. And I think so we have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon a spiritual principles, we think we ought to not urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. Think about this for a second, because I was like this as a new alcoholic. I was on fire for AA. I eventually got to the point where I was on fire. Well. I was on fire for the parts of AA that I liked. Okay, I was on selective fire for AA, and there were people that were close to me that weren't alcoholic, who weren't into this. But part of my fire is, it's all about God. It's all about God. It's all about God. God is everything. God is everything. And God is everything in my mind except your behavior, which you need to change right now. And I'm going to say something and present with you an argument as to why you should change your behavior. So think about the irony they're talking about here. We should not urge our family to live upon a spiritual basis. What we're meaning is God reached out and got us sober, picked us out of the trash bin, and rescued us and delivered us. And won't He do the same for our families and those close to us, if it be His will? And that's what they're talking about when it's not a theory. We have to live it. So we should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. And here is a promise. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember, and those two sentences right there are promises. And then we close it out with more explanation in green. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Miss Donna?
Yes, sir. Sorry. So was the first part until we got to that promise all in green?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And then we finish, and then some blue, and then we finish up in green. And so what they're really speaking to is also to, because it can be discouraging when we feel, because in our minds, it's a new day. The past is behind us. And not only that, we're surrounded by people who are affirming it's a new day. You're a new person. Let's not think about what I've done for the last 20 years. Let's not deal with the consequences or be accountable for the influence I've had on people. And of course, let's not dwell on the fact of all the times we said to those around us, I'll never do it again, or I'm different now, or I've changed, or I've got a new plan. They've heard it all before. And now moving on, so that's the family part, and now he moves on, and all of the next sentence, or next paragraph is in green except for the last sentence. So, and now he's moving on in general about the amends process, and he's saying, there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. I think when they're talking about honestly, say to ourselves, the adverb there is critical because, first of all, I don't think any class of people have so abused the word honest or honestly than alcoholics. And so it was easy for me to read that sentence for years and just breeze over the word honestly. Yeah, sincere. But what they're really meaning is in a spirit of vulnerability. If we can be vulnerable with ourselves and say, and maybe even with a sponsor, and say to, and we're talking, of course, about people who are deceased, or people who aren't reachable, or people who you've lost contact with and have no idea how to find them. If we can honestly say to ourselves, we would write them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And again, I want to, there are many synonyms for honest, but I would the one I would lean on for this paragraph is vulnerable. We send them a and that notion of vulnerability, let's really hold that close right now, because that's going to be, at least for this paragraph, an important theme. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. And I will say, for those of you who are either still have amends to be made, I think the critical part in this, when they talk about we don't delay if it can be avoided, I think the biggest mistake we can make is making ourselves the captain of our amends ship, meaning we're in charge of the amends process, our amends process. And I think it is critical, even if we're well-intentioned, to be doing this with a sponsor or a spiritual advisor to whom we are accountable on a regular basis. So we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be, and this is explanation, we should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. And I want to hold that. I'll go on to the next sentence, but I want to hold that for a second because we're going to come back to it. And then we finish up with a promise. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. And I call that a promise, not a direction. I mean, you might take that as direction. Well, this is how we act. But what I'm going to say is my experience has been, without the benefit of the spiritual action of the steps, my disposition and mindset was either hot or cold, meaning I was either in guilt, remorse, and self-loathing, or arrogance and self-importance. And what they're talking about in that last sentence is that a promise of this spiritual program of action is that God will reveal to us a new middle way of being that is not based on self-loathing, that is based on self-esteem, yet is not arrogant or superior. Because one of the things, and I'm going to share a pet peeve that I have heard over the years in meetings, is sometimes you will hear people say, well, I'll make amends, but I'm not going to be anybody's doormat. Anybody ever hear that? Maybe it's just me. The problem is that, well, first of all, no one's advising that we be a doormat. But the problem is the attitude or the assumptions that we're having about the other person. Because when we say we're not going to be anyone's doormat, there are assumptions that the other person wants to use us as a doormat. And what's underneath that, and they may or may not, but what's underneath that from our attitude is pride and intolerance. And what this passage or this paragraph is telling us is what we have to practice rather than pride and intolerance is we have to practice humility and consideration. Right? Right there. We should be considerate and humble. And again, I'm going to say there's a reason that this paragraph is closed out with a promise. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if I could be considerate and humble without the 12 steps and my higher power, I'd be sleeping in on Sunday mornings and not living the life that I live. And now we come, so I hope that makes it clear. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. I think it's critical that we see that as a promise and not direction. So, and then that all of the next paragraph is promise after promise. We have come to part 2 of the 9th step promises. And if you were here a couple weeks ago, we talked about part 1 of the 9th step promises. I won't review those now, but if you want to know where they are, leave me a chat message and I'll point those out later on. But part 2 of the 9th step promises. Before I read them, because I think we've all heard them before, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development. I used to love when they read the promises in a meeting. Let's read the promises. It's not that I hate it. It's not that I think it's a bad practice. However, here's the contrarian part. However, what has happened over the years, what I've found, what I've observed, is that, first of all, these are often referred to as the promises when they're just one of 2 parts of the 9th step promises. And I've already gotten a request for the 9th step promises, part 1, and I won't read them, but if we flip back to page 78, it talks about the first full paragraph on page 78 are the first part A, if you will, of the 9th step promises. And what they are is they are promises about how people will respond, how others will respond when we set out to make amends, when we make the amends. Part B that we're on, or part 2 that we're on right now, is how we will respond, or how we will benefit from the promises, from step 9, excuse me. So the little issue that I have, and I think it's even more than a little issue, is that when they're read in meetings, most often what happens is they become part of the weekly or daily ritual of that meeting. And what has happened is that they become like generalized. And here's what I mean. Those promises are attached to a very specific series of actions that are in the pages before them. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, you get this. And what happens when they're read in meetings is what I find very often has happened is they become detached from the plan of action and generalized. So that what it becomes, we read them and are these extravagant promises? We thank God. And the problem is it reduces them to ritual rather than the product of actions that we need to take on an ongoing basis. And what I found, and this is, I'm going to sound really, I hope I don't sound too negative here, is what I found is that I listened to the promises read in meetings, and then for the next 45 minutes, I listened to people who are sometimes baffled as to why they're not experiencing certain things in their life that are contained in the promises. And that's because the promises have become detached from the actions that need to precede them. Okay, so anyway, that said, we're going to assume that we've done the 9th step amends, and here we are. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. That doesn't mean halfway through sitting through our 90 and 90. That means halfway through we've surrendered to God. We have written an inventory. We have shared that inventory. We have come into awareness of the exact nature of our wrongs. We have asked humbly that God remove these character defects. We've made a list and we've started to go out and make the amends. That's what they mean. We will be amazed before we are halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. And that's a summary sentence, meaning all that stuff that we just read in the lines before then, this is stuff we can't do for ourselves. And that was a piece that I missed for years, because what I thought when I would read these or hear them in meetings is, I just need to try harder. I need to be more diligent. I need to remember. And that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is these things come automatically. And then a question. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. And then so that's a question in orange, and then we're going to close it out with the rest of this short paragraph in blue for a promise. We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always, always materialize if we work for them. And what we've been talking about again is the work. So it's 7:01. I'm going to leave it there. And so we can open it up for discussion. And I'm interested to know, I would really like to hear your experience with this. Maybe if you've struggled with it, there are 45 people here. If I'm the only one that struggled, maybe you can tell me how you didn't, and I can learn from you. So let's open it up.